The beautiful Maya, as you guys can see, we are recording the Legacy Woman show, which is by every Friday. Every other Friday, we post a new episode. So today episode, Maya is a mother, grandmother, a passionate inner healing advocate. She is deeply committed to working alongside women as they heal from life wounds, discover their true identity, and grow into the woman God originally designed them to be. So here's Maya. Welcome to the show, Maya.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Esther, for having me.
Thank you for being here. So today episode, I want Maya to tell us a little bit about herself, and then of course I'll be able to ask her a few questions, and we can just make this just a regular conversation. Okay? So grab your favorite drink, coffee, tea, or water, and let's sit down and talk to Maya today.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm Maya, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak. This is something new for me, but I'm truly glad to be here. As Esther talked about in introducing me, um, I come from just a lot of childhood wounds and a lot of childhood trauma. And I really believe that hindered me so many years in my life. I didn't realize how wounded I was. I didn't realize how hurt I was and how it was ultimately crippling my development, not just naturally, but spiritually as well. And so I have just developed this passion for helping women. I mean, anybody could benefit from it, but I really feel like helping women heal from those wounds of the past because they stop us from moving forward. They stop us from living in our original design. And so that has just really been a passion of mine that I feel like God developed in my heart. And ultimately, I named myself the Becoming Woman because I always felt like I am becoming who God designed me to be. And that could be broken up because we heal in different places. You know, I can be really okay here, but I still have. So we're always traversing through that life of forward motion and becoming and healing and ultimately living our lives in God's design. Um, you can ask me some questions.
Oh yeah, I have the first question is
Okay.
okay. You talk a lot about healing and discovering our true identity. Can you
Mhm.
take us back to a moment in your own life when that journey really began for you?
Yes, I can. I would say I was probably about 30 years old. It took me a minute to get there, honestly. I was a very hurt and angry person, but I didn't realize that I was that angry. I knew I was hurt, but I didn't know I was that angry. And what I realized as is the anger goes as deep as the pain. And so if you're deeply hurt, you're often probably deeply angry because anger kind of keeps it suppressed. It keeps your hurt from surfacing. And I can remember a moment when I was in church. Mind you, I've been saved a long time, but you can be saved and still be in pain, still be wounded, still be hurt. You really have to understand and go through that process of realizing that you are, and then the being delivered and being healed from the pain. So I was in church. I remember a specific moment. I was in church, and one of the ministers called me up to the front, just out of the clear blue sky, and she said, "Today is your day of deliverance." That's what she whispered in my ear.
Wow.
And I always felt like, let me just back up a little bit. I always felt in church I had to be strong, and I had to have the facade of having it all together. And so I also believe that that is one thing that kept me bound longer because I did not show that I was hurt. I was almost like I had to have this facade of being strong and having it together, and nobody saw through that. And so, in this particular service coming forward, she said that to me, and in my mind, I'm like, deliver from what? Like, because you think deliverance is demonic, or you know what I'm saying. You think, and it wasn't that. God saw my hurt, and I don't know what it was like an out of body experience. She began to pray for me, and all I remember was just screaming. I could not stop yelling, and I realized at that moment that the lid had came off, and all the anger, all the pain, all the hurt had started to come out. And I remember hearing myself yelling, "I am so angry!" Like I could not. I could. It was almost like I couldn't believe that that's what was happening in that moment, but that was my first breakthrough of freedom and liberation. And I say that because um, with the lid being off, everything was coming out, but it also gave out access to come in. And sometimes we don't want people to see us out of sorts or broken, but that is the best place for God to enter in. And so that is kind of where I remember my first kind of introduction into healing and forgiveness and all of that. So that kind of broke the door open and started me on the journey of healing.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. There is something that you said when you at church, it's like you don't want the people at church to know. You want to be perfect. It's
Yeah.
like when you go to church, it's like everybody just come show their best self. But I
Yes,
believe that the church is a place for sick people.
it is.
It's a place for sick people. I find myself in the past doing that where I would go to church and I said, no, no. If I'm unhappy, I need to find someone that I can talk to.
Yes.
If that's not the right person, oh well, then I find someone else.
Yes.
Sometimes we hiding who we are
Yes.
in church or at work, and then at home we going through it.
Yes.
That can cause me to ask you this question: how did that affect you in your marriage? Because you someone that also got married young.
I did. I did. I just think that nobody really saw the real me. The thing about my husband was a very loving and affectionate person. And I truly believe that because I was the way that I was, um, I was not able to really accept or embrace his love for me. When you're hurt, it's a barrier. So you don't get fully what you need or at the full potency that you can get it at. It's like a filter that's over your heart or a wall that's over your heart. And so he was very loving, but I could not receive that. And so I really believe God brought him in my life to let to help me, get to that point. But initially, I could not receive it. So it affects um, my, how can I say it? I don't want to. I would say, to be honest, I would say intimacy because you can be in the act, but it's not intimate. Does that make
It's
sense?
like you're doing it for him because you know he's such a good person. He's a
Correct.
good husband.
Correct. So it's you know, it's a facade.
Yeah,
It really is.
I
It's
can
not.
relate.
It's not really the real you,
Yeah.
because your heart is not really out there. It's hidden,
Yeah.
and so you don't really get the maximum love or everything that you're supposed to get from your spouse, and also from God either. It's there and it's being given to you, but you have a wall up. So I can definitely say that I was not able to fully receive or embrace the love that was given to me because I was so hurt.
Oof. That one is a big conversation that doesn't people don't talk about those type of things, whether it's in church, especially Christian women.
Mm-mm.
A lot of them are suffering with things like that. They
Yep.
don't talk about it.
Mm-mm.
And I feel like it's time for them to do so. And
Yes.
I pray that when they do watch this podcast, when they do go on your Instagram page or
Mm-hmm.
go on your YouTube channel, or
Mm.
when you start your own podcast, they
Yeah.
can see that I was there and I can
Yes.
help you because I've
Y-
been there and done that.
Yes.
And it was hard for you. So now you be a example for them.
Absolutely. Like I've been through it so I can hold your hand and help you
Yeah.
get through it as well.
And not
But
feel
yeah,
ashamed,
and not feel ashamed.
not feel fear
Mm,
either.
nope. And that was a big thing. A lot of the things that I felt came from my childhood, the fear, not being one to be seen or be heard because the way that I grew up. And that this podcast can go on for hours if I really go into that. But that's where it came from. And so ultimately, when you get married, your husband marries you marry your spouse's past, present, and future. So they get all of that. So if you're not well or you're broken, they're marrying that person. And so that you have to deal with those things.
Oh, thank God he sent you a patient man who still
Yes,
love you despite.
very
Uh,
very patient. Yes, because I would reject it because I did. It felt weird to me to receive love or affection. That was another thing I wanted to say. Affection was very very hard for me to receive. Yeah. Mhm.
Especially if your husband was somebody that's nagging all the time, or if he was somebody, babe, I'm loving you. Like
Yes. Yes.
God know exactly what we want and who
We.
can deal with it, and
Yes.
and that's mercy right there. And that's grace. And sometimes we don't even
Hmm.
think about it that way.
Yes,
Wow,
yes.
that was
That's
very
such a great perspective, Esther. Yeah. Because sometimes you don't think about that. Because me and my
yeah.
husband been married for so long, I never even thought about him handpicking my spouse for not just that moment,
Mhm.
but for the seasons that I would have to walk through. Yeah, that's
Mm,
that's
that's a good
me.
one. Ah,
Yes.
that's a good one. I'm
Yeah.
supposed to be recording my own episode this week.
Yeah.
I can. It's like,
That's awesome.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
this little.
Mm.
Okay, my next question for you would be, what does it mean to you to live forward by divine design?
To me, living forward is knowing who I am in God. That's one aspect of it. Um, for a long time, I didn't recognize myself as a child of God, a daughter of God. And that being misaligned, um, it made me an outcast. I Because if you don't know who you belong to, or you don't know how valuable you are to who you belong to, it affects everything else. And so I had to come to a understanding that my life was written. It was predestined, preordained by God from the foundations of the world. And so God had an original design. He says that before I formed you in your mother's belly, I knew you. But then also I think it's in Psalms 139. David talks about you made me, all the in
Inner
like
being,
the in my
everything.
inner being and the delicate parts of me, and you wove me together and you watched over me in my mother's womb. Like when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, I was made. He made me already. But what happens is we go through life and experiences and things that happen to us, and they begin to try to reshape us. And so we come out of the original design, and now we're functioning from what happened to me. Now we're functioning from a victim mentality. Now we're no longer walking in, I'm a daughter of God. I don't know that anymore. My identity is now warped. And so I just feel like God has an original design for us that He's already created. He says that I already wrote it. I formed you already. I already had a destiny for you. You're preordained. So that means that I existed before I existed. I existed before He put me in my mother's womb. And so, Him being the author of my life let me know that I had a story already. And so, living forward to me is getting back into the original design of God, knowing who I am in Him, not what my experiences told me, not any labels or titles or even any roles or responsibilities that I took on before I knew who I was. It's more so getting back into God's original design for my life and His purpose for my life and finding that out. And so ultimately, when you know you're a daughter of God, you know you have purpose. And then you start seeking Him for that. And then once you start doing that, you're able to start moving in that, and you're no longer held by your past. Now you can live forward by moving forward and walking out the destiny that God has for you. So living forward to me is knowing who I am in God, and also knowing what I'm supposed to be doing for God and walking forward in that and not letting my past hold me back.
Oh, I love that. And I have a follow up. How can women begin to embrace that in their everyday lives?
For me, what I had to do is I had to unlearn a lot. I had to unbecome before I could become. I had to rid myself of the lies that my circumstances told me. So I really had to do really a good self reflection and start seeing myself for the current state that I was in, and also using the word as a mirror to see what God really said about me. Um, and so I'm not saying that these things did not happen, because sometimes people say, oh, no, it happened for your good. I ultimately believe that. But before it happened for me, it happened to me. And I cannot dismiss that, because it's like saying, you stub your toe and I say, Esther, your toe hurt. Or you say, my toe hurts, and I dismiss that. You still hit your toe and it
Yeah.
hurts, right? You
Hmm.
have to acknowledge that pain. And so for me, that's what it was. I had to acknowledge the condition that I was in. And then I had to say, okay, God, this is not who I am. This is not my identity. My real identity is in you. So it took a lot of soul restoration and care, therapy, prayer. It took a lot of renewing my mind with the Word of God. Um, It took a lot of affirmations. I had to do a lot of work, and I still do that work because it's not just about obtaining it, it's about maintaining it and walking in it. Um, so for me, it's just really about taking on what God says about you more than what your experience have told you. So you have to create a new belief system.
Ah,
You got to
a new
believe
belief
different.
system.
You got to believe different. And that was the thing for me because it starts in the mind. And if you don't change your mind, you don't change anything. Your words don't change, your actions don't change. When you can create a new belief system based on the truth and not the lie, then you can start walking in that newness and start walking forward because the past is telling you the same stuff. It ain't nothing new back there, so for me it was learning who I was in God and unlearning, learning, unbecoming. I had to take a lot off and then take on what God said about me.
So the new ministry God gave you is called Unbecoming,
It's
because
called the Becoming
the
Woman.
becoming woman,
Mhm.
the becoming woman,
Mhm.
and that's part of your journey in your life.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, um as I was talking before, I kind of um so I'm just gonna let me just be
Yeah.
candid. My initial wound came when my mother left.
Hmm.
My mother left when I was 8 years old, and when she left, I felt like she took me with her, my identity, um, who I was, and also it created this thing in me where, how significant, how important are you if your mother can leave you? So it created that abandonment and that void. So I took on the identity of not mattering. And so I was raised by a single father, and that's a challenge in and of itself. And that's a totally different story. Oh my, our lives are so layered.
Oh,
But
yes, it is.
that was my initial wound that I walked around with most of my life. And so um, the becoming woman came as a result of me not really knowing who I was. And I knew that I was more than I was. I just didn't know how to get there. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to stop hurting. I didn't know the steps to take. And I think ultimately when that incident happened in church, that was God giving me a way of escape. He was like, this is where it starts. And that led me down the path of forgiveness. So the becoming woman is ultimately just about becoming who you are outside of your experiences and no longer walking in the labels and titles that people have given you. I married young, but before I married, I had two children out of wedlock. And so because of that, that was another label. I took that on. And then with that, I then took on responsibilities of mother and wife when I didn't know who Maya was. And so because of that, that created identity crisis because now I'm just what I do. I don't know how to be because I don't know who I am. So now I'm just walking through life doing. So then the perfectionism kicks in, then the performance kicks in. Then I have to be like this to be loved, and then I have to do this to be accepted. And so all of that creates that narrative. So my whole life, the narrative that the enemy wanted me to believe, I believed it for a long, long, long time. So the becoming woman is the woman who is awakening. It's the woman who is um not always there yet. Because sometimes we feel like, we got it all together. I got some parts together. I do. I got some good parts together, but I'm still becoming. There are still some things in me that God is working out and things that God is walking me through, but I'm doing it forward. I'm not doing it by looking behind. I'm doing it by looking to my future. And so the becoming woman is an active movement towards your future, not your past. And for a long time, I lived in my past. And so sometimes people don't know how to address their hurt. Sometimes it's just simply saying, ouch. Very simple. That hurt. Now let's find out why it's hurting you. Let's find out how it damaged you. Let's find out why you're showing up in the world like this because of that initial hurt. It's not ignoring. In order to become, you have to address things. You have to look at things. You have to look at you. It's an inner work. And for many years, people say, "Oh, you're so pretty," and I'm like, "Yeah, I know, but my heart is broken.
Yeah.
I wanted you to see beyond that." And so The becoming woman is just that person. It's liberating the woman within. And the only way you get there is by moving forward. You don't get there by living in your past. Your past holds you hostage, keeps you in bondage. That's what the past does. You think about it. I'm thinking of the story in the Bible of the Israelites when God delivered them right out of
Mm-hmm.
Egypt, and they wanted to go back to Pharaoh, and
Just
Pharaoh
because
was
they were
behind.
hungry.
Pharaoh was behind them, so they wanted to go to the past, which was their bondage, which was their prison, which was the thing they asked God to deliver them from. Their freedom was in front of them, not behind them. But they we know sometimes that we're too familiar with our past, and so we live there longer than we need to. And so I think, when I think about the becoming woman, it's the woman that's coming out of the past and no longer um, addressing the past because she doesn't live there anymore. She's moving forward, and even if it's a struggle someday or it's hard one day, I'm gonna stumble forward. I'm not gonna stumble backwards. So when I get up, I'm still going that way. That's how I see life now. It's more forward thinking, forward moving, and not letting the past hold me back. Because even if I'm falling, I'm falling forward.
Oh, I
I'm not
love
I'm not
that.
I'm not held by my past. I just tripped over something, but I'm on my way.
Yes. Fell
So
forward. I love that. Fell
yes,
forward.
I'm gonna keep. And when I get up, I'm still looking forward. I'm not gonna go back and say, oh nope, I'm going forward. And so that's kind of the becoming woman. It's so full. It can be broad, but for me, it's about no longer letting the past hold me back.
And it's personal to you as well.
Absolutely, it
It's
is.
personal.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank
So,
you for sharing that part. Did you already create your Instagram page with that name already?
yes, it's called the Becoming Woman Community.
Yeah, I love that. So any of you watching right now, every information will be in the description on the YouTube channel. It will be
Hmm.
on the podcast episode because I want there are women in this world right now that need to hear your story,
Hmm.
that need your help to get out of the
Yes.
past, to stop looking backward and move forward.
Hmm.
Your story would be a testimony and help inspire them. So if you're
Yes.
watching right now, or if you will watch this in the future, definitely check the description, all the information for you to follow her page
Hmm.
and different stories that God gonna give you.
Yes.
And I think
Yes.
that's beautiful because I wish I had somebody like you in that past.
Me too. I wish I
I
did
wish it's like
too.
that's a beautiful thing. You're looking at yourself right now. You said, "Man, I wish I had myself in the past, like to help me get out
Yes.
of it." But everything happened for a reason.
Absolutely.
God create those struggle. Sometimes He let you go through it so you can learn. But
Yes.
it's like
Yes.
if you didn't go through this, you wouldn't be who you are today.
Yes.
Even though sometimes I say, God, I still wish there was something you had stopped. But
Yeah.
He let it happen for a reason.
Yes.
And sometimes we don't reason sometimes that cause some of those
Yes.
delay. But
Yes.
God is faithful and our story have
Hmm.
purpose
It
and
does.
it would break chain.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you ever heard there is this trendy thing that be going on social media. It's like write your 12-year-old letter or write your 8-year-old letter.
Uh-huh.
What would you tell her?
I
Yeah.
did I wrote myself a letter. I don't think I wrote it to my younger self, but I did do something in therapy where I envisioned my younger self. And I went back to the time um, where I felt like I first lost my mom, when I first came to the knowledge of she's no longer here. And I went back to that little girl at my age now, and I looked at her and I told her, "You're going to be okay."
And that's beautiful.
I looked at her and I told her that. I'm like, "You're going to be okay. This is not going to end you. You're going to make it." And I just began to tell her about my life now. You're going to marry um, your husband. You're gonna have three children. Like I began to let her know because I didn't have anybody to speak to. No one spoke to me in that moment, and I just spoke to her and I just told her it's okay. I don't remember it like any adults being around. So it was a very weird kind of moment because I'm going back to 40 years and I'm trying to look at this 8-year old girl and tell her that you're going to be fine. And I also wrote myself a letter as an adult. Um, and it was more so me encouraging myself because at that state in my life, um, I was hurting, but I wasn't addressing the hurt. And I was asking myself questions in the letter, kind of saying, um, why can't you see yourself this way, or um, why can't you get better? And it wasn't like a bad question. It was just more so about trying to unearth what was really going on with me, because people on the outside could see things about me that I couldn't see about myself.
Ooh, yep.
And so it made me question, like, why don't I see that? Why don't I see myself valuable enough to do the work? Why do I keep falling here? Like, I had to look at myself. And that was kind of the beginning, too, a part of me jumping into therapy and starting the healing process, because I could not see myself beyond where I was. And when you're living in the past, you don't see the future. You don't see beyond. You only see behind, or you only see where you currently are. You have no vision. You live day to day. You don't think abroad. And I was very limited. And so in my mind, I knew that I was stuck somewhere. And so I began to question, why are you stuck here? Why can't you see this? Why can't you see that? And that began questions really unearthed some some deep stuff if you really let it and you sit with it and you really answer authentically and honestly. um you'll find some things that may not be pretty in the moment, but God can deal with that.
Yeah,
So
I like that. Even for anybody watching right now, whether it's a young woman or a young man, and if you feel like you're in a season where you feel stuck, you
yeah.
feel like every year going the same way, every year you're experiencing the same thing over and over. Stop asking yourself the hard question. Write the question down, answer it
Yes.
as much as you can,
Mm-hmm.
and if you cannot write, send a voice memo or record yourself
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
write yourself a letter just like you did. And
Yes.
I feel like that would help a lot, because when you feel stuck, oh, it feels like there is no hope.
Wait, yes. No, you feel like there's really
Yeah,
no way
no
out.
hope.
But I think a big part of it is awareness, knowing that you're stuck. Like, this cycle is ongoing. Why is this cycle ongoing? Something is keeping this cycle going, and you need to disrupt that. And how do you disrupt it? You have to find a way to disrupt it. I, like you were saying, you wish you had someone. Like, it was so weird, because I always feel like, I'm like, gosh, I wish I had somebody to help me or walk me through this and that and that and
Mm-hmm.
that. But I realized that there were things happening in my life that was propelling me into these areas. It wasn't necessarily one person or two people. It would just be sometimes someone would ask me a question and I would be like, I don't know. But that would be the thing that I would go back to and be like, that's interesting. Why they ask me that? You know what I'm saying? So sometimes, you have to be aware of when God is giving you these moments of um, these openings to address things as well.
Okay, my next question for you.
So,
Okay, you work with many women where you volunteer, where you help them out. Um, what are some most common wound or identity struggle you see?
honestly, I haven't started really working with a lot of women, but I will say that the women that I talk to, like, just at work or just in
Mm-hmm.
um coming to in passing or in
Mm-hmm.
church or whatever, um, you said common wounds.
Yeah, it's like common wounds or identity struggle.
Hmm.
Like any woman that you speak with.
Yeah, well, mostly I feel like the women that I speak with, they get lost in their role.
Mm.
They get
That's a
lost.
very important one.
They get lost in their role of motherhood, their role of wifehood, their roles in other people's lives. Um, and so I think you can lose yourself in those things when you don't know who you really are. And I did. I lost myself in that because I never gave myself room or permission to discover. And so when you start early like I did with children and becoming a wife and church and all these things, you have to give yourself room to discover. And I didn't have that space because life just kept going.
Mm. Life
Um,
keep life in.
yes, life just kept going, and I didn't have at that time. None of these things were even on my radar. So this is all in
Mm.
hindsight. But what I discover is with women that I do talk to, they get lost in what they do. They feel like they're what they do. They don't know who they are. And I feel like when we get to a place, or when you get to a place when you know who you are, what you do comes with you. And then you don't necessarily have to perform because People want you. And if they want you, they want what you got. All of you comes. But if we get lost in what we do, that defines us. And if we're no longer doing that, then who are we? And so I just feel like you have to come into being a human being and not a human doing,
Mm.
you know? So most women that I talk to, I feel like they get lost in what they do on a day to day in their lives, and they don't realize there's more. There's more to me than this. My identity is not what I do. It's who I am in God and how he already value you as such. You don't really have to do anything more to be loved, to be valued, to matter to him, to be significant to him. Like he's already proven that you are those things to him. But again, when you go through different things in life and you don't really lock down who you are, you start doing to make yourself significant. And so um, that's why I think for me, the women that come to me the most, that I talk to the most in passing in life, that's where they find themselves. Um, I don't want to say stuck, but I just feel like they get lost in that because there's no self discovery in just what you do. It's just, you're just doing it. And most times as women, we can do those things robotically
Oh yeah, it's
without even
like,
thinking about it.
yeah, I remember I used to say I am more than just a mom. And when you watch on Instagram, you would see people creating content around motherhood. It's like they don't know who you are and who they are. And just like
Mm-hmm.
you said, they have to do self-discovery, knowing that God already loves you the way you are.
Yes.
But sometimes it's so hard. It's like, okay, I wanted to be a mom. I choose to be a mom. Now I'm home with those kids. I don't know how. I always said like you cannot pour from an empty cup,
Yes.
and I always fill my cup with God first,
Yes.
and then He fill me, and then
Mm-hmm.
I can pour into my family. And
Yes.
that even though I am a mother, I'm a wife, but I also have my own identity. I also have things that I
Absolutely.
enjoy to do, things that
Yes.
I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's it right there. Yep. And so you have to make room for discovery in different seasons of your life because you do evolve, you do change. You know, I'm not the same person I was when I married my husband at 18. I'm 40 years older. So when you start thinking about self discovery, you're trying to figure out you, and you have to give yourself room to do that. And so that's just one of the things that I got lost in. I got lost in the labels, the titles, roles, and responsibilities. And sometimes people can make you feel bad for that. Like, you're a mom,
Mm.
you're a wife. Everybody wants to be that. That's
Yeah.
like but we're made for more.
Yeah.
Those are not definitions. Those are not God defines us. He gives us our identity, not those things. They're part of who we are, but they're not the only reason we're here.
I
So,
love that. If you are somebody that's watching right now and you said, okay, how can I get to that level where I can feel like I'm confident enough to know who I am, what my role is in motherhood? The answer is simple. Learn, know who God is, and learn who He called you to be and who He
yes,
said you are.
yes,
And once you can discover that, it'll be easier for you to
yes.
embrace yourself and love yourself fully.
Hmm. I agree with that
Yeah,
100%. Because most times the crisis comes because we don't know who God made us.
yeah, to
That's
be.
that's where we ultimately what we're looking for. We don't know that we're looking for that. The more is in Him. Really it is. And then once you find that, and then you start, I think, like I said, the first thing for me was knowing that I was a daughter of God, because I felt orphaned. I felt like I had to take care of everything on my own. So that's where the false strength came from. Nobody's looking out for me, so I got to look out for me. And so um no disrespect, I feel like my father did the best that he could with us with what he had, but I wasn't raised. I grew up. That's a
Oh,
difference.
that's a big difference, and people don't know the difference.
And so, because of that, I had a lot of things that I had to learn how to do for myself. And so, even though my father was there, people would say, your father said you weren't really an orphan, but orphan just is just a neglected person. Their need wasn't met. So, I had a lot of needs that were not met. So, I looked at God the same way. I didn't think He cared about any of those things. And so it made me feel like I had to depend on me. And so once I realized that I belonged to God, it changed the game, because now He's my father and I'm His responsibility. He's going to take care of me. You see what I'm saying? It
Mm-hmm.
changes the narrative. And so I had to learn that first. I had to learn that He was my father first. From that came everything else.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I used to call myself, I feel I'm an orphan with a mother and father. That used to be, that's a title of a book that I wrote in
Mm,
sixth grade. I wrote that. I
wow.
said, I am an orphan with a mother and father. I always consider myself as an orphan. When
Mm,
people would say, what do you mean? But you have a mom and dad. I said, but my need wasn't met. I
yes.
felt neglected. And I
Yes.
even said that to God. I said, why did you create me with that
Oh my.
family?
Oh my. Oh
It's
girl.
like, why did you put me in
I.
that family
Oh
if
my
you know they
gosh.
wasn't going to take care of
I asked
me?
the same questions. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
It's
I
like,
literally
why?
asked the same questions. I did.
Yeah.
Why? If
Why?
you knew my mother was gonna leave, why did you why did you put me with her? Why
Yeah.
did you, if you knew my dad would do this and do that? And blah, blah, blah. Oh my gosh. I would ask those questions for her. But that was a part of my healing.
Mm-hmm.
That was a part of my healing, asking those
The
questions.
part of you becoming.
Yes, it was a
Yeah.
part of me discovering. And you don't discover without questions.
Oh yeah.
You got to dig up some stuff,
Mm-hmm.
shine some light on some areas that you may not want to be seen, or there's exposure in discovery. And so you got to be willing to allow yourself to go down that path with God. You don't have to do it alone. And that's one of the things I also learned, that I'm not by myself. So yeah, but yes, I asked those same questions.
Yeah, I
Oh my
used to ask
gosh.
them a lot, and my friend used to say, "Why are you asking God those questions? It's
Hmm.
like you knew me before you formed me in my mother's womb, so you knew what was gonna happen. You knew the present,
Yes.
the past, the future, but you allow it. So that's when you don't love me. So I don't love
Ye-
you either. I'm gonna be rebellious. I'm gonna leave you. I'm not gonna talk about you. So
Yes.
you mistreating me, I'm gonna mistreat you." I used to literally say talk like that to God, but it was important that I did those because it
Yes.
helps me to say, "Oh, I have authority. I can ask him question."
Yes.
And when I go read the Bible, and then it makes me go read my Bible more, because in order for me to question God, I have to know what He says. And
Yes.
now I'm gonna call Him a liar. I'm gonna say, "Well, you're a liar because in your word it said this, this, this,
Mhm,
and I don't feel it right now. So
mhm.
show me your face. Show me who you
Yes.
are."
Yes.
And I feel like that season can help you discover. Wait, God is not a liar. When He speaks, His word does
Yes.
not come back in void. So now that I'm speaking His word back to Him, now
Mhm.
He's opening my eyes. Now I'm
Yes.
starting to heal. Oh, wait, He didn't neglect me. It
Yes.
just that person choose not to take care of me the way he
Eggs.
asked them to. So
Exactly.
it's like I started to understand more. The more question I asked, the
Yep.
more mad I was, the more angry I was,
Yes.
the more clarity I keep gaining.
Yeah.
Because in order for me to ask those hard questions, I had to read my Bible.
And it pushed you closer to him.
Exactly.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. That's a part of, I think that's just such a great part of your healing. And also too, you were acknowledging, honestly, you were hurting.
Oh yeah.
And that's the thing, a lot of people don't want to feel. They just want to keep walking through life. But there comes a point where you just got to say, this hurt. And then I'm going to just address it. It may not look pretty. Healing is not pretty.
It's not. Oof,
It never is.
it's
It's not a pretty process. But the other side of healing is that it's worth it. And you're better than you were before. And so, but yes, I remember asking those questions, and oh my gosh, I just felt like I was just one big mess up. I would always say, oh my God, if something came up that I discovered about myself, because in discovery, you find out also, you see your flaws as well. You see your weaknesses, not only your strengths. You see things about you that you don't like.
not. Hmm.
And so when things would come up, I would say, oh my gosh, just one, that's one other thing. That's what I would tell myself. But I was healing, and I didn't really know what that was my first time really looking at myself. And healing allows you to look at you. I do want to say that because oftentimes we think when we're healing, it's about blaming the other person or the other party. I think at some point you do want to place ownership um, on the persons involved. However, they are not responsible for your healing process. I do want to say that because ultimately the wound is yours. If I cut you, Esther, right now, you may be looking for me to heal it, but I may run out the front door and leave you in here bleeding and open with the wound. What are you going to do? You're going to chase me down and say, heal me, and fix me, Maya, you cut me. And what if I say, no, I don't care nothing about that? You got to come back in here and you got to do something to the wound. You
Yeah,
have
figure
to
it out,
address it.
adjust it.
You have to figure out, how do I stop this bleeding? How do I get better? How do I let this wound don't get so bad that it get infected and I lose my whole arm? You got to go into care. You got to go into triage, and you got to let God into that area. And so for me, a long time, I was looking for my mom to heal it. I wanted her to fix it. And God showed me, it's your wound, baby. We going to fix it together. And so that was the thing that I had to learn. The wound was mine, and it was my responsibility to find the care. And Jesus, God, Holy Spirit was the care that I needed. And for so long, I didn't let him into that area. So
Especially when you're hurting, you don't want him to.
you don't want nobody to touch it.
Yeah, you don't want
You
nobody.
you like nope,
Yeah.
nope, and that's how it was. Not recognizing that he knew exactly what I needed and he knew how to tend to me without hurting me further.
Whew,
Hmm.
this is so good.
Yeah.
My next question.
Yeah.
Okay. For the woman who feels stuck, overlooked, or too broken to be used by God, what would you say to them today?
Hmm. The woman who feels overlooked, stuck, or too broken to be
If
used.
you don't have it to share with a specific woman, use yourself or you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I will say this: you don't have to have it all together. Sometimes we feel like, again, I was saying that I felt like I had to be perfect. I had to have it all together before I would say anything, use my voice. I felt so inadequate. I would tell the woman that you are not overlooked. God sees you, He knows you, He knows you by name. I would definitely tell you run to the feet of Jesus. If you don't have any other options, give God your pain, cry out to Him, let Him know where you're hurting at. That's a starting point. Just tell Him, this is where I'm hurting at. This bothered me. I had to go to God and I had to tell God, when my mother left, I felt like she took me with her, and that hurt me. And I don't know what to do with this pain. And that is an opening. It's like you have to give God permission. I would say consent, like let God into those areas. I used to have, I would say, like no trespassing sign up, and I would say, God, you can go everywhere else, but you can't go over there. God will not rape us, and He will not force Himself upon us. So I would definitely say give God permission. Know that God sees you, because the Bible tells us that He is close to the brokenhearted. He binds up our wounds, which means he was wounded for our wounds, and he wants to heal those wounds. So we just have to allow him into those areas of our lives and give him access so that we can be treated and tended to. He cares about you. He cares about your soul. He's the lover of your soul. So he cares about the condition of your soul. So I would just say, let God into those areas. And then you know what? You feel seen when someone is taking care of you. And sometimes we don't feel seen because we haven't let God in our lives or in that area to treat it. We kind of pushing it off. And for me, that's how I felt. I felt neglected. I felt not seen. I felt like God wasn't there, but it wasn't that He wasn't there. He just wanted me to let Him in. And so when you let God in and you let Him touch those areas, His care for you will let you know that He sees you. His care for you will let you know that He loves you. His care for you will let you know that you're not being neglected. We just have to give God that permission. And so for me, that is what I would say. Let God into the areas that hurt the most. Don't push him from those areas. Let him into the areas that hurt you the most. And then when you let him in, let him help you out. And so whatever resources come with that, um, because there's also things in the earth that God will give us to do as well, to collaborate with Him and cooperate with that care. So that's what I would say.
That was nice. Thank you. Okay,
Mhm.
my last question for you is, what legacy are you hoping to leave behind? Not just for your children and your grandchildren, but for the woman you pour into, or you going to pour into.
Mhm. I would say, forget the former things, forget the former, and walk in the newness of life. Um, it took me a minute to get there, but just as Paul said, he was forgetting the past and pressing on, um, reaching. He said, I was pressing and I was reaching. And I would say to the woman, forget the former things and walk into the newness of life. Um, the legacy I would want to leave is that you have a future, and your future is secure, and you don't have to fear it. because we don't live by fate, we live by faith. Your life is predestined. And I would just want it doesn't matter your past either. Where you start is not where you're going to finish. And so I would encourage you to keep moving forward, keep living forward, keep pressing, and keep, um, yeah, I'm going to stop there. But just keep moving forward. Don't let the past hold you back. So,
That was beautiful. Thank you
mhm,
for sharing that.
mhm,
This was nice. I'm
mhm.
glad we had this conversation
Yes.
because this bring back some of the memory of the past for
Mm.
me, and you remind me of wow,
Look how
I
far
come
you
from a
look how far you've
look how
come.
I've come. Yes, look how far I've come. And I
That's
used to pray and say, God, please take it away.
yes. But that's the living forward. You see, when you can see where you I've learned to draw from my past without living in my past. And when you can do that, when you see that you're ahead, you're living forward. This is your life. Your life is moving forward. And so um, that's the encouragement. You can look back from where you came from, but you don't have to live there. You can draw from it and
Yes,
use it while you're still moving forward.
I
And
love
so,
that.
yes,
Because some people sometimes they're afraid to even look back, so they don't go back there. But you
yes,
can just use it as a
you
testimony,
draw
as an
from it because you're
example.
not looking back to live there. You know, that's the difference between Lot's wife. She looked back because she longed for it. She wanted to live there. She didn't want. We're not trying to live there. We don't long for it.
Nope.
We just referring to it to tell you how good God is. You
Yes.
know, and so that's my life. The destiny is that you don't have to stay there. Keep moving forward. So
That was beautiful. Thank you so much for being here.
it
Thank you
was
for
a
joining. And I
pleasure.
pray the Lord would bless anyone that's watching and that you can learn from this. And
Yes.
if you need any help or you're looking for someone to speak to, I'll put Maya all her information below and you guys can join her community. God
Yes.
used story like my story, her story,
Mhm.
to share testimony to show you that you are more than enough. You are not broken. You
Yes.
might be delayed a little bit because of your past or what going on in your
Mhm.
life recently, but know that you are made for more. And let's move
Yes.
forward. And God is good and He's faithful.
Mhm.
Any last word before we close out? This was
Yeah.
beautiful. I feel like every nugget you shared, it was like on point. It was
Yeah.
beautiful, and I can't wait to watch back.
I'm grateful for the opportunity, Esther. I really, really appreciate the opportunity. Um, just to be living forward in God's design for my life. This is I am able to see it. Um, and it's just a blessing. So I thank you for your yes, because it gave way
Thank
to my yes.
you.
And that's what it does. It
Yeah.
gives way to other people's yes. So I'm just truly grateful, and I bless the Legacy Woman Show community, and thank you. I
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much. Thank you. God is
Ah,
so good.
ah.
Thank you. This was beautiful. I'll close out and then we do your